In this video, we will look back at the truly remarkable career of Bernard Hopkins.
He can get up. He's got the desire. He's never been knocked out. This fight is over.
Hopkins is one of a kind. He accomplished things in his career that may never ever be matched.
Supposedly demonstrated penchant. Right goes Calzaghe down on a perfect right hand shot by Hopkins. And Joe Calzaghe's been down before, but never in a big fight.
No.
He was a ruthless fighter early in his career, and he became the craftiest fighter in boxing as his career went along.
Oh, a right uppercut, and Bernard Hopkins lands and knocks down Joppy.
It's over.
Mitch Alpert stopped this fight.
He deserves the ultimate respect from boxing fans.
Here you see Bernard moving in as if he's going to go into a clinch and shoot a perfect pinpoint short right hand. Couldn't have been any better than that.
And in this video, we follow his career all the way to the end.
Wasn't even expecting that, because from that shorter distance, it would have made it much more effect than if it had been a long-range punch.
Hopkins looked extremely sharp in his fight against Mitchell.
The first round, the opening round, what did you send him out there to do?
Body shots, mainly the body shots. Dave Tiberi and Tyrone Frazier.
Look at that right hand.
Will go into the corner of Hopkins and Sean O'Grady. Well, if we hear a bell, and now it is Hopkins closing in. Mitchell with the referee.
Mitchell's legs were there, and the referee gave him a count because the ropes were keeping him up.
And this should get him out of the round. There is the bell. Nothing, says Danny Mitchell, so he goes stumbling at the end of the first.
That brutal combination was enough for Mitchell, and he quits immediately.
They say no problem, or that's it. He says that is it. He has had enough. So
let's have a nice, clean fight. Good luck to both of you. Touch gloves, go to your corners.
They were getting it on early, huh?
After an intense stare down, Hopkins came out and put combinations together immediately.
Exactly. One thing that happens as we see Bernard putting combinations together and doing body work, one thing that happens when you begin knocking everybody out is that you get overconfident, think you're going to do it to everybody. And this one looks like it's not going to go that long, Charlie.
And to come back and do as well as has done in the boxing arena.
That was the short left hook inside that really hurt Stokes there.
He's in big trouble, real big trouble. But he's still got his wits about him. But it's Hopkins. Look at the short shots, short pinpoint punching. Look at the uppercuts. And mixing them up, looking at his work, getting his work done.
The short hook was just too much for Stokes.
He's rated #3 in the world in the IBF rankings right now. He's relentless, Charlie.
That's it.
It's all over.
Knockout in the first round.
Notice Hopkins throwing 6 of them in a row here.
A little bit of time before you got your whole life together at the hands of Rob Murray and Bowie Fischer.
Unfortunately, yes. And it turned my life around. And it's basically not what I've done and what I experienced in the past. It's what I'm doing now. But it motivated me to give me a new life. Yes, I've been in trouble. I've been in trouble previous times. But I'm on the road now. I got a second chapter of my life. I'm 27 years old.
This fight was over very quickly.
Last fight, a minute 44. And this one may not go a whole minute. And Rudy Battle is trying to stop things.
And I don't really mind the stoppage because there was a moment there where Powell was out of his feet and not defending himself.
I'm the man in the middleweight division to reckon with.
Now, of course, a guy can get hurt out there. And we know, like Tyson, who can hurt guys.
And I said I'm going to counter with a straight right hand. And if he goes back, I said I'm going to throw 2 left shots to the body. You see, now watch the body shots. I didn't go right for his head. I threw 2 body shots. 1, 2.
That's the type of thing that the old fighters used to do. The Sugar Ray Robinsons, the Jake LaMottas, went right downstairs.
And there is the executioner symbol that accompanies Bernard Hopkins.
In his world title fight against Roy Jones, I don't think Hopkins had reached his prime yet. Notice the speed difference. I don't think Roy was as technically sound as Hopkins, but his ungodly speed and reflexes gave him the advantage over virtually everyone.
Not likely to hold the attention of this audience for long. Overhand right by Jones lands in close quarters. It's the position from which Muhammad Ali used to throw the jab.
Right hand, left hook, left, and Hopkins answers with a right hand.
Roy's quick hands, I think, are winning the fight so far.
Roy was countering nicely. I don't think Bernard had seen this level of athleticism before.
Punches by Jones. He threw in the last round after 4 rounds without a single such attempt.
Look at that beautiful move that Roy Jones made to escape from the ropes. Just unbelievable, just all natural talent.
Harold, give us your score midway through this 12-rounder.
Larry, I've got it 6-0, 60-54, Roy Jones Jr.
I had the same scorecard at this point. It's not like there was a great deal of separation in the rounds, but Roy was just a bit faster and flashier. Hopkins was always competitive. Notice the timing on the counter right hand.
Good right hand by Hopkins. Caught Jones coming in.
Another good right hand.
2 good solid right hands by Barnes. Another good right hand.
And Jones seems momentarily off balance.
Jones gets...
Damn, what a brutal body shot by Jones there.
Then backs away from the ropes effectively. Lands the right hand over the top. That wide winging right hand, you wouldn't teach it, but he makes it work, Gil.
Again, we mentioned he's like lightning.
Hopkins is older than Roy, of course, but he took up boxing much later and only turned professional at the age of 23. Hopkins at his best was a master of control in the ring. He completely controlled the distance, engagements, economy of punch output, and overall timing that took place in the ring. All of these attributes come with experience.
Because he hasn't hit with any solid combinations, Larry. It's leap in, one quick punch, but he just hasn't been able to put them together.
And eventually Hopkins stepped away. Right cross lands solidly on Hopkins' chin, and Bernard once again doesn't move.
Notice Hopkins taking the fight to the inside. He tried that at certain points in the fight, but Jones could always hold his own.
Unexpected.
These are the top 2 contenders in the IBF rankings. They fight for the title vacated when James Toney moved up.
Now the IBF middleweight champion of the world, Roy Jones Jr.
I thought Roy won clearly, but at the same time, it was a close kind of fight, if you know what I mean.
Bernard Hopkins.
In his comeback fight, Hopkins won every second of the fight and got the stoppage in the 7th round.
Would be good on the ledger. Would be impressive. Richard Sealing close.
He's not giving himself enough room to let his combination flow smoothly.
And this should be it.
Since Hopkins won every minute of the fight, I don't mind the somewhat premature stoppage here.
Right there at the end. Watch this hook. Kaboom. Now.
In his next fight, Hopkins put on another show.
Heavy punches, all business. Look at Bernard. Serious. Get down to business. Down goes Wendell Hall. This fight is just a matter of time. There's another level. It is against Roy Jones. So his fight plan was to box him, to stick to the basics. Well, the basics don't help you when your opponent's nailing you like Bernard is rocking you.
But Hall gets through the 2nd round. Barely.
No. Please.
The corner wants to stop the fight. Wendell Hall
try to pour on that final 10 and steal the judge's eye. Well,
I thought the fight should have been stopped at this point, but they sent Hall out for the 3rd round, and he proceeded to get some brutal punishment.
Stowers in the corner of Wendell Hall sees this fight shown the way we should. So
this is a different
one-sided. The towel will be coming in shortly.
There it is.
Stowers throws it in. The referee, though, does not stop the fight. The towel cannot stop it. And now the count is on.
That's all.
There's no doubt that Hopkins had a mean streak, and I think he wanted to flatline Hall right there.
He had to do it.
Well, you know, he lost control on several occasions in the fight and also in the corner between rounds. Wendell Hall was...
Hopkins had a fast start against Wynn.
Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, Morgan State and South Carolina State as they get ready for their tournament. There's a left that caught Wynn. It looked like more of a push. I don't think it was a solid hit.
Well, and I think there was a right on top.
Notice the counter right here, which gets Wynn going again.
Trucks going against Melvin Wynn out of Atlanta. Good left hook by Hopkins and a right, and Wynn is staggered.
One thing about Hopkins, he always has great balance.
He's going to be in trouble here as long as he stays inside.
And a right has knocked him down here in the 3rd.
His corner is trying to stop the fight.
They do.
It's all over. Was there anything that you wanted to do today that you didn't get a chance to get done?
Get him out of here earlier than I did.
Bernard, the Executioner Hopkins.
Hopkins traveled to Ecuador and fought at a very high altitude against hometown fighter Mercado. This turned out to be one of the hardest fights of Hopkins' career. Hopkins started fast. Look at the amount of punches he's throwing here in round 1. Hopkins was in control, but in the 4th round, we see him hurt for the first time in his career.
Mercado brings him to their feet again.
And
Hopkins
really
a little wobbly.
He caught him with a great big banging right hand, and he's right on top of him.
I thought Hopkins has recovered well and was winning the round.
Very soon with that looping left hand. Good combination. Right hand got to him.
Until that happened.
Hopkins caught a right hand right on the chin. In that exchange, the right hand puts him down for the first knockdown of the fight.
Solid punch. What Mercado is waiting for, he looks like a guy that's waiting to start a race.
Hopkins was able to survive.
The crowd in a frenzy as Mercado heads in.
Perfect 1-2 here, and Hopkins felt that one.
That was a right hand that looked like it shook Bernard, and from there on out it encouraged and enlivened.
We're not really sure where he might have hurt his leg. He did get it while he was attacking you.
Well, you know, that's the kind of punch that knocks you out. When you see a guy's head go like that and he's spread eagle like he was.
The replay shows us that it was a short inside right hand.
It's all in that inside punching where it didn't look like they were doing each other any harm. All of a sudden, see that right hand right there? That's what did it. That little right hand. His head just shook, his body shook, and he went down. Miracle he got up because he really got it. Oh, see how clean that was? That and the delayed reaction of him going back. Had he hit him that clean second shot, he would.
Hopkins came out and fought fire with fire.
Off the canvas a little bit and caused his leg to move in a strange way.
Now Sam Williams has just warned Hopkins to break on his command.
He got hit again.
And I thought he was unlucky not to get a knockdown scored in his favor here because the ropes kept Mercado up.
See that bump right on? You see that?
There was more drama in the next round as Hopkins continued to take the fight to Mercado.
Hopkins, you could almost hear that body shot. And now Mercado spins it in, and Hopkins is down.
There was a little tiny punch in that clinch that got Hopkins in trouble, just like it was before on the inside, a small punch. He gets up, he's mad. He's saying, no, it isn't. But he sure went down.
Hopkins got overzealous, and this is what I mean when I say I think he learned a lot from this fight.
Round number 7, Hopkins down for the second time in the fight. And Mercado trying to put the finishing touches on it.
You don't see him taking undue risk in his later fights.
Uppercut. See how he's holding on? That little uppercut had him in terrible trouble. These are pushes. Nothing. That little uppercut, tiny as it was.
I thought Hopkins took most of the rounds in this fight, apart from the ones he was hurt in or took off.
On that rope, just trying to take the... Oh, all of a sudden, Hopkins caught him. Mercado's in trouble.
Mercado grasping to try to hang on. Hopkins had caught him with something.
He caught him, and they're both so tired they can't finish in any kind of style. But Hopkins is a fresher. Look at those punches he's throwing.
113 to 113 a draw. La decisión es un empate. The decision is even, a draw.
In the end, the fight was declared a draw. I had Hopkins winning by 4 points on my scorecard.
I don't want any hitting on the break, no punching after the bell. All right, let's have a nice, clean fight. Good luck to both of you. All right, let's touch gloves. Touch them up. All right.
The rematch was a grudge match, and it was a totally different story. Hopkins put on an unrelenting show of aggression.
A right hook. And now a left hook by Hopkins.
And he is in big trouble as Segundo. Take a look at that right hand. That had been a little bit lower. He goes to the canvas. As it is, you can see he's in big trouble. It was high on the forehead, like on the brow of the eye. 2 great shots.
Hopkins realized that the right hand was the punch he could land.
There's a lot of time left.
And that is a big factor this time. Oh.
Early in the 7th round as Hopkins barrels in again and digs to the body.
Well, I'll tell you what, blood just squirted all over my
Paperwork here all over me. Let him go.
There is no let up in this attack by Bernard Hopkins.
He says let him go, but Mercado ain't letting go. And I don't blame him. Hold it, that's it. That is it.
Roddy Battle waving it off as he stares into the eyes of Mercado, who goes, what happened? What happened?
Mercado just wouldn't let go of Hopkins, and then he looked out of it. It's a premature stoppage, but the referee was in a tough position there.
You know, as I got warmed up, I started working on the right hand. I've been watching tapes. I'm a tape freak. Everybody calls me for tapes. Bernard, give me the tapes, give me the tapes. And, you know, I know we don't get them back, but I've been watching Tyson, how he came for first 20 fights as a professional. He ran through these guys. He didn't give them a chance to let them know what they have. And that's what I'm going back to. I'm going back to what I didn't do with Roy Jones.
This is for the IBF Middleweight Championship of the World. Protect yourselves at all times. Shake hands. Go back to your corner and wait for the bell. Come on.
Hopkins said he was obsessed with watching tapes of a young Mike Tyson at this point. It showed.
And hope to fight him later in the fight. Good right hand, right out of the box. Down goes Frank. Right there.
First punch of the night. You know, when a fighter takes a fight on only 7 days' notice, you think he might come out and take his shot early because conditioning will be a factor later. Here, he doesn't take a shot. He looks, he waits, hesitates, and bang, he's caught.
And he is hurt, too. It's over. He didn't give the right answer. It's that simple. I'd have probably gone for the state instead of the city there.
Hopkins was actually a hunter at this point in his career. He became a crafty trap-setting oldster later in his career, but in his younger years, he was an absolute killer. Joey Lipsey was an undefeated contender and highly ranked in the division.
Oh, and a lethal combination by Hopkins. Both of them landed on the head of Lipsey, and wisely he grabs.
He grabs, and he took those punches. That was a hard combination by a world champion, and Joe Lipsey has to find a way.
Hopkins wanted to make a statement, and he did.
Solid chin.
Oh, a right uppercut, and Bernard Hopkins lands and knocks down Joe Lipsey.
It's over.
Mitch Halpern has stopped this fight. This fight is over. You're right. It was a right uppercut by Bernard Hopkins, and that hurt Joe Lipsey badly.
Lipsey was straightened up by a beautiful counter uppercut.
Firing a straight left, the champion stepping back, a right uppercut that absolutely stopped Joe Lipsey dead on his feet and lined him up for the right. It was that uppercut and then the right and then another right, and down he went, and that fight was over. You could see even before he hit the canvas, you could see.
Lipsey retired after this fight, and I can't blame him.
I expect a clean break at all times. I'm looking forward to a clean fight. Any questions here? All right, let's have a nice, clean fight. Good luck to both of you. Let's touch them up.
Hopkins put on a complete display in his next fight. Notice this counter punching.
James unloads with a right. Oh, and James for the first time in 28 fights in his career, he is down.
Look at how Hopkins can punch and move so effectively. His balance is just picture perfect, and that allows him to constantly be in position to throw punches.
Threw it on, he is. Right here, still looking for it.
And he is all over Bo James. He had Hopkins right back on him, and Hopkins looking to end it here on the 11th. Bo James, and this one is stopped.
The referee had no choice there. James wasn't throwing back and was hurt on the ropes. That left to the body was brutal. The WBA champ, William Joppy, was a very interested spectator in the crowd. When Hopkins was coming up through the ranks, he was chief sparring partner for world champion John David Jackson. Jackson was a skilled southpaw, and this is why Hopkins was always so comfortable fighting southpaws in his career.
Oh, another thumping straight right hand to the jaw by Bernard Hopkins.
Jackson was the kind of guy who used speed and skill to win his bouts.
When he goes to lean back or either way, he's off balance. There you saw it, he leaned into the ropes. He just doesn't have any balance. When he bends backward, all his weight is on one side of his body. He can't jockey or shift back and forth. You know, it's terrible.
If you've watched some of my videos before, you know that the straight right hand is the kryptonite punch for southpaws. Hopkins throws it in a variety of ways.
That right hand was solid, fellas.
Yeah. Bernard Hopkins with a vicious right. Down goes Jackson. Scrambling, sprawling to the canvas.
2, 6, 7.
He went from 2.
Notice Hopkins attempting the counter uppercut that obliterated Lipsey a few fights ago.
That loop's too slow.
Oh, look, yeah.
Yeah, but see, it wasn't
there.
Right. It wasn't a straight. It was a roundhouse. A southpaw's not supposed to throw a left hook. He's supposed to throw a right hook from his right hand.
And that gets Hopkins.
In the end, it was the combination punching to head and body that just overwhelmed Jackson. Jackson really should try to clinch here, but he just seems completely out of his league.
Oh, look out. Oh, a big right hand by Bernard Hopkins, and Jackson going through the ropes. And he continues to hit him. And that's it. It's over. Johnny Femia Jr. finally steps in and ends it, and Jackson does not know where he is.
He just was not defending himself.
One thing about John, I'm a little envy of him because he got a modern career. I don't look that good.
Championship of the world, 12 rounds, touch your gloves, come out at the bell. Good luck to both of you.
That is a good left hand from Hopkins.
Known as the Road Warrior, Glenn Johnson was one of the toughest fighters to ever exist. He fought against every major champion around at his time, and the only man to ever stop him was Hopkins. Johnson would say that he just wasn't prepared for the level of boxing that Hopkins brought to the table, and that his fight was the toughest fight of his career by a very long margin.
When you see that cut open up, you really zero in on that blow like that.
Right hand, and Council wobbles back to the corner.
Hopkins went into the hometown of Andrew Council next and won every second of the fight.
Council gets inside, little hug from Chevalier.
And another point is being taken away.
Council had points off for holding, and I thought it was just an extremely dominant performance from Hopkins.
Executioner Hopkins.
Any questions in here? Touch him up. Let's go to work. Touch him up.
In his fight against Simon Brown, Hopkins landed one of the best uppercuts I've ever seen.
You guys are supposed to get $700,000 in its entirety. Whoops!
What a shot.
Stirring uppercut by Hopkins deposits Brown on the seat of his pants.
And Brown does not know where he is. He doesn't have a clue right now of where he is. Brown has no idea of what is going on right now.
Hopkins followed up with some nice combinations. I thought that Hopkins was always a terrific finisher when he wanted to be.
But Hopkins still landing.
Oh my goodness. He's getting tortured here.
That's enough.
Yes.
That's enough. Oh yeah.
Most definitely.
Oh yeah. Bernard Hopkins with a 6th round closeout.
Brown tried to throw back, but I think he was just way too hurt from the initial brutal uppercut.
Pretty lengthy uppercut. Normally you're not supposed to try to reach with the punch.
From 154 all the way up to light heavyweight, I wanted to take that chance, man. You talked about it. And listen, that's what champions do. They take risks. And Robinson did when he fought light heavyweight in his day. So I want to take the chance to prove I'm the best. Well, I think Bernard is clearly the best middleweight out there today.
Robert Allen was giving a good account of himself against Hopkins. And it had been a tough fight up until something crazy happened.
Allen got in a wicked left uppercut there and continues to hold it. Mills Lane trying to break Allen away from Hopkins, and he goes through the ropes and down to the ground.
A knockdown from Mills Lane. Mills actually pushed him through the ropes.
Hopkins falls out of the ring after referee Mills Lane tries to break the fighters.
And this guy's not getting up. Now this could be, oh, he's in trouble.
Some people say Hopkins was faking an injury to get out of the fight, but I don't think so. Hopkins usually improved as fights went along, and I don't see him faking an injury here to get out of the fight. This won't be the first time we see Hopkins fall out of the ring.
He pushed me, and I tried to grab on the ropes, and as I went on the ropes, I tumbled over, and my knee, I guess, twisted. I just felt like burning sensation in my ankle.
Let's have a nice, clean contest. Let's touch gloves. Go back to your corner.
The rematch had to happen. What a counter right there by Hopkins. Insane stuff.
The seat of his pants.
No, he got hit. He got hit.
He got hit in off balance in the combination.
He was off balance. It wasn't a power shot that got him in trouble.
No protest from Allen.
No, he was hit, and he went down. He lost his balance.
And
he does get hit first. There's a punch. Now he's out of balance. He just goes down.
I think that this is one of the best displays of Hopkins' accurate straight right-hand punching. Allen is a southpaw, and Hopkins utilizes the straight right hand brilliantly in this fight.
It was a shot to the chin. Stevie brought on the inside.
Keep your eyes on a big right hand.
In the 6th round, Hopkins goes to the body with an extended combination, and Allen is in serious trouble.
Body shots by Hopkins. He's all over Allen now. Straight right by Hopkins.
That was a body shot that did that, Steve.
Allen
He's getting beat to the punch. He's getting beat to the punch in numbers and in intensity. He is in trouble for real right this minute.
He's in trouble right now. He's got to fight back.
Hopkins just kept the pressure on, and these were mostly unanswered punches, so I think the stoppage was okay.
Steps in and stops the fight. It's all over. Hopkins, TKO.
Referee Bill Page has had a tough gig here.
In his fight against Vanderpool, Hopkins was unloading.
Hopkins is their execution. 10 seconds to go in the round. Page thought that was the bell. Pulled Hopkins off at a moment when Hopkins was trying for a late TKO. And the referee costs the crowd the last 10 seconds of action in the...
But the referee mistook the 10-second warning for the final bell.
And you'll see Bill Page pull Hopkins off of Vanderpool.
The ref really messed that one up. Hopkins was a 2-1 underdog as he took on the Puerto Rican legend Felix Trinidad at the pre-fight face-off. Hopkins threw the Puerto Rican flag on the ground in front of 5,000 Puerto Ricans and had to make a run for it out of the arena to get away safely.
Protect yourself at all times. Respect the bell. Touch gloves. Touch them up. Respect, respect. Touch them, Bernard. Let's go, let's go.
Trinidad had a reputation for having a big left hook and was thought to be the younger, fresher fighter. The New York crowd was very pro-Trinidad.
Hopkins beginning to unveil his jab and sticking it accurately.
Notice Hopkins is constantly moving to his left, away from Trinidad's big left hook.
Hard right hand by Hopkins. Biggest blow of the fight. Trinidad momentarily stunned.
Nice overhand right there. Notice how the punch was a bit unorthodox? I thought Hopkins figured Trinidad out pretty quickly.
Found him in range.
I thought Hopkins' jab was working, but Trinidad was a warrior, and he knew his left hook was an elite punch.
Felix is a marathon runner who builds the tempo from round to round, and he's trying to build it with the left hook right here. 4 straight left hands by Trinidad.
I thought Hopkins was beating Trinidad to the punch and staying defensively responsible. I didn't see Trinidad getting that many punches off in the fight.
Of skills as he continues to outbox Tito.
I don't believe what I'm seeing.
And Hopkins was the guy controlling when and where the action took place.
And the biggest thing Hopkins has accomplished by my lights is he's just refusing to bend to Tito's will. He's still making Tito fight his fight.
Notice Hopkins landing and getting away here, completely outboxing Trinidad. I thought Trinidad got more and more desperate as the rounds went by.
Move off the ropes, and for the first time in the fight, Hopkins is grinning at Tito Trinidad.
Here we see straight right hand, but Hopkins is not loading up on these right hands. He's throwing short, quick punches and getting out of the way.
In the 10th round, he had no choice but to try to go to war with Hopkins.
We're seeing the heart of a real champion in Trinidad because he's come through some serious fire.
This is the determination of Felix Trinidad.
Trinidad is going to have to take some chances.
And it's being matched by the determination of Bernard Hopkins. What an awesome show. What a great, great fight as we come down the stretch in the 10th round.
Blood coming out of Trinidad's nose.
At the end of the round, everyone realized that Hopkins was totally in charge.
Most of the crowd on its feet as they watch the two fighters trade through the round and beyond.
And Trinidad almost looks out on his feet.
Notice that the first right hand sets Trinidad up for the uppercut he's not expecting.
Bernard Hopkins' patience during that fight resulted in that round, but you heard the question in Trinidad's corner.
It was all Hopkins now, as he went looking for the finish.
Hopkins imposing his will and his skill on the man who is tonight the lesser fighter. Oh, huge right hand. Huge right hand by Hopkins. Down goes Trinidad. I'm not sure Tito can get up. He's got the desire. He's never been knocked out. This fight is over. Steve Smoker stops it. No.
Bernard
Tito Trinidad comes in.
Has done it.
He knocked out Trinidad.
Bernard Hopkins has put himself up there in the list of all the great middleweights.
I really liked how Hopkins came inside here and changed the angle for the right hook.
Goes down in the middle of the 12th round and cannot continue.
The narrative going into this fight was that Hopkins was the older guy on his way out. What people didn't realize was that he was in his prime.
Well, Larry, you take the best weapon from the guy that they're using against you. If the guy has a gun, you get to the gun. You don't run from it because you got a better chance on smothering or got a better chance on getting to the gun. I had to take his left hand away from him, smother his shots, and keep my defense up, a good defense. But I do have a good defense just as well as an offense. Trinidad is a left hook guy. That's all he had, and I've been watching him for years.
Carl Daniels obviously isn't Hopkins' best opponent, but Hopkins put in a very good performance.
Is it better in the exchange on the inside as I see it, and a very, very, very powerful.
I think the main thing about Hopkins at this point is that he doesn't really have any flaws as a fighter. There is just a high level of craftiness to most of what he does. Notice how he sets up the left hook here. A lot of the time, Hopkins throws punches just to set up the final punch of the combination.
Hopkins, two right hands slapping to the head and the body.
The body shots are just placed so accurately, and the left hook is always set up by a right hand.
I think that he's conceded the activity part now. He's just looking for one shot. There it is, one.
In the 9th round, Hopkins started going through the gears as he started pushing for a finish.
Undisputed light heavyweight Roy Jones is no longer watching, but he might want to take a peek. Bernard Hopkins is serious. Let's send it down to Jim Lampley.
At the end of the 10th round, Daniels, who lost every second of the fight, quits.
Carl Daniels' corner elected not to go on. Let's take a look at a lot of those body punches and tell us about them.
Well, I was out too far a little bit on some of the body shots, but I wanted to keep digging right there. The left hook to the body, I worked in camp with it and wear him down because I know he was a mover and he covered his face up pretty good. And he gives you the body because he don't want to get hit upstairs. So I kept on left hooks to the body and hopefully, put money in the bank and get him later on.
There was constant talk about the potential rematch with Roy Jones at this point, but neither side would agree terms financially.
For a lot of years, he thinks he deserves more money. What is your response to that?
Well, Roy Jones been eating a little bit more that much dog food that he was feeding his pit bulls down in Pensacola.
When I say break or stop, do it. Both use touch gloves now.
Morade Hakar was a mandatory challenger. Hakar brought his track shoes to the fight, and it made for a very boring spectacle.
It'll be a victory here tonight. Just go the distance. Don't worry about anything else.
You mean reach the end of this round?
Just go 12 rounds, and that'll be a victory.
The crowd was already booing after 50 seconds of the fight, and it only got worse. The difference in class between the fighters was clearly astronomical.
Depends on how much track practice he's had.
Welcome to Philadelphia. Gets in the ring and catch a guy too relaxed.
Absolutely brutal shot there. I thought Hakar showed a decent chin to take that.
Hopkins is not normally a big one-punch puncher by this opponent.
Left foot lands again.
Hopkins started messing around and playing with Hakar. I think this has just frustrated the fans and viewers more than anything. If you're having such a mismatch, I think it's fine to showboat as long as you're beating your opponent up along the way. But just messing around and playing with an overmatched opponent when you could just obliterate him at any time is understandably a little frustrating for people watching. I know it's not easy when your opponent is in survival mode, though.
Down. He's just going to get beat up more. If he had got counted out, it would have been better. Now, if the referee doesn't call that a knockdown,
look at that.
There will not be a knockdown.
He's not calling it a knockdown, George. He's saying that he slipped on a wet spot.
Pretty bad call by the ref here, I thought. That was a clear knockdown.
Whoops. This is a #1 contender, folks. Surrounding areas, yes, absolutely, all our best to our armed services overseas. Hakar makes it out of another round, perhaps to his corner's chagrin.
At the end of the 8th round, Hakar's promoter looked furious as he stepped up on the ring apron and called a halt to the fight. I think he did everyone a favor right there.
You think anybody wants to see this kind of fight again?
Well, it don't matter if they want to see it again.
Well, how do you get paid if nobody wants to see it?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm not leaving out here without a check tonight.
Well, it looks like tonight you got paid for doing not much.
Well, let me tell you something, Larry. You get paid every day on the TV for not doing much.
Touch gloves and good luck. Touch gloves.
In his fight against William Joppy, Hopkins made a bet with him for $50,000.
A lot of angles. And another good right hand that time. And Joppy.
The bet was that Hopkins would knock him out. I didn't think Hopkins came close to knocking him out, but he landed sharp-looking punches all night. Joppy was a tough guy and was hard to put away. I thought Hopkins won every round and dominated the fight.
Well, he did, and he may get $50,000 out of the payday of Bernard Hopkins, but that's not going to be much of a reward for the beating that he took.
All right, gentlemen, legal punches are here on up. Take a good look. Here on up. Let's have a good, clean fight. Touch gloves and good luck to both of you.
Hopkins' fight against Howard Eastman was a very tactical affair.
Again. Eastman is very defensive here and is making this a boring fight for the crowd.
Hopkins was going for his 20th middleweight title defense. Eastman was a technical fighter who just had problems with letting his hands go at the highest level.
A beautiful left hook lead. Now he's starting to warm up.
There was just something with an Eastman that prevented him from truly putting it all out there. I think in this fight, he was just too worried about running into punches because Hopkins was catching him with counters. In this fight, I think Hopkins just out-hustled Eastman. Hopkins was mainly coming in with pot shots from the outside and using his lateral movement to continually offset Eastman, who really had problems letting punches go against Hopkins.
Right too close and came right over the top of that jab.
Eastman was just inferior technically, and Hopkins was always able to time him with his punches first, particularly the left hook.
That same left hook over and over and over again.
Bernard Hopkins fought a beautiful fight. The one thing I got to say about Howard Eastman is he's got a great jaw, but that doesn't win fights.
Hopkins took on the undefeated Jermaine Taylor next.
Jermaine, Bad Intentions Taylor. Bernard, the Executioner Hopkins.
That's one of his two most effective punches, the left hook.
Taylor had good reflexes and speed. Notice how he counters Hopkins with a right hand here.
He at least has a sheen on his shoulders.
Hopkins, at the age of 40, was giving up 14 years to the 26-year-old Taylor. In the second round, Taylor surprised Hopkins with his speed.
I'll tell you now, Bernard's thing going to look to wait this out so he can make sure he sees Taylor's punches.
He didn't see that right hand well enough and was momentarily stunned.
And I told you the thing was going to be how well could Hopkins take that right hand.
Taylor was always extremely dangerous in the early rounds in his fights because his speed was so surprising to his opponents.
And the back of the head, that's a dangerous punch.
Double jab there.
Hopkins started using his experience now. Notice these somewhat illegal shots here.
And a right hand to the head, and immediately Jay Nady says you can't hold him and hit him.
I think he wanted for a low blow action, Jim.
Hopkins was a master of adjusting during fights. Notice Taylor missing here.
Here you see Jermaine miss with the right, and there you see the low blow right there. The second one was low too, and that's what the ref saw. Then he hit him with a good right hook to the head.
While holding it behind the back.
There's so much stuff he did at one time that Jay Nate didn't know what to say.
Notice this unorthodox left hook by Hopkins landing.
Bernard's playing to win the first 3 rounds.
Big left hook by Hopkins. Taylor takes it well.
Hopkins was having success with his timing, but Taylor's work was flashy and the crowd was behind him.
Right hand inside by Bernard Hopkins. Brilliant counter right hand. Caught Taylor flush. Big left hook by Taylor. Caught Hopkins coming off the ropes. Almost got the right hand on it.
Here you see Hopkins in a beautiful counter hook right there, or actually the counter jab.
I thought Hopkins' timing improved as the fight wore on. He was also still using his crafty tactics on the inside.
That's what he wanted to do right there.
He landed a sensational right-hand counterpunch right on the jaw of Taylor, the biggest punch of the fight so far.
By attrition, and that's what I think he's trying to do here.
But he's not active enough to do it, it seems to me.
The pro-Taylor crowd booing as Hopkins is again warned.
Notice the use of the head here by Hopkins in this replay.
Good right hook. No, I didn't see a hit, but then.
Well, Hopkins managed to clip Taylor's chin with his head as he was kind of leaning in.
Taylor was still throwing a lot of flashy stuff, though.
Good body shots by Taylor, right and left, and he gets away before the counter comes.
Good jab by Jermaine.
I think Jermaine Taylor's confidence is rising, Roy Jones.
In the championship rounds, I thought Hopkins took control. What a right hand there.
That may be the punch that could turn it around for Hopkins.
That was, so now can he execute or not?
Hopkins again catches Taylor with right, hits him behind the head. Nady pulls him back in.
Bernard chased him, threw a hook to make him duck and brought him right up into that right hand. Boom. Good shot right on the chin. That shot really ran another right hand right behind it. They had Jermaine in a lot of trouble.
Taylor got countered hard and hurt in the 11th round.
His left eye is swelling.
That's what he has to do. Stay aggressive. Be the aggressive fighter. Oh, there you go.
Hopkins knocked him out. Peace out with the right.
You better be careful.
Well, it promised to be the toughest title defense.
Oh, I heard him.
Hopkins' long middleweight reign, and it certainly has been that.
That hurt Jermaine Taylor real bad thing, I think.
And new undisputed middleweight champion of the world.
I agree with the judge who scored the fight, 116-112 for Hopkins, but Taylor had the crowd behind him all night and was always throwing flashy stuff, and he was now the middleweight king.
You know, I'm Bernard Hopkins. I'm a big boy. I know I won. I can go home with that. It wasn't a situation like when I fought Roy Jones over 11 years ago where I knew I lost.
Me, I'm going to be honest with you. At 40 years old, he still outlanded the guy. He has a very good argument that he won the fight.
Hopkins parted ways with his longtime trainer, Bowie Fischer, before the rematch, and his head trainer was now one of his longtime chiefs, Second Nizam Richardson. I didn't think that made much of a difference at this point in Hopkins' career because he was such a veteran of the game, but I think I was wrong.
Obey my commands. Do you want to touch gloves? Okay, don't. Yeah. Let's go to work.
Taylor came out and threw some hard rabbit punches early.
Hopkins tried an early attack. Taylor countered it with some hard punches in the corner. Jay Nady warned Jermaine Taylor immediately for hitting Hopkins on the back of the head.
I think he was warning Hopkins that he was going to fight fire with fire if Hopkins used any dirty tactics.
Things on top, baby. We working. Stretch out for me.
All right?
He's trying to rest.
Yes, he's trying to lay back. Save something for the end.
Did you catch that? Hopkins said he was trying to rest, and Richardson reaffirms that and says, save something for the end.
Taylor does more damage.
It's about the timing and the space. Good shot.
There's a straight right hand by Hopkins, his best punch of the fight so far.
The judges all gave Taylor at least 5 of the first 6 rounds. One judge gave Taylor all of the first 6 rounds.
Got blood on the ridge of his nose, and he stops Hopkins in his track with a jab.
Not much was happening at all, but Hopkins was just low volume. I think he was trying to keep those rounds tight and come on late, but I think Hopkins started way too slowly in the fight.
About his career. But Jermaine Taylor is a far better athlete than most of the guys Hopkins erased in his career.
I like how Hopkins ducks after throwing this left hook.
Still has a long ways to go.
Technically, there's no way he's as good as Bernard.
I agree with Harold's scorecard at this point.
To the right behind the ear of Jermaine Taylor.
Taylor's jab in that round was nice, though.
One of those great jabs of his own. And to me, that is his best and most effective punch.
In the 7th round, the fight had moved to the second half, and Hopkins' work rate increased now.
7th, Harold, how do you have it?
Okay, Jim. 5 rounds to 1, 59, 55, Jermaine Taylor. Straight Jim. Bernard Hopkins, when he throws a left jab.
I just thought Hopkins was the one who began landing the bigger punches at this point.
Moving a little left, a little right, then he sneaks in with the straight right hand. Jermaine Taylor doesn't have a chance to move.
Certainly hasn't dug himself a hole.
Big right hand by Hopkins.
And taking control of the fight.
That's an upset. Little left hook landed for Hopkins after he missed big with the right.
I thought this was a fight of two halves.
I think he is frustrated, but
Hard right hand by Hopkins.
You see, Bernard Hopkins has the kid waiting on him. He throws two short jabs followed by a beautiful right hand. I think that's the best punch he's landed this fight.
Big left hook for Hopkins. Shot. That's from Hopkins' right hand and maybe from a butt or two.
And that hook might have hurt Taylor just then by Hopkins.
Stop! Is it the future or the past? Is it youth or age?
Harold had the fight for Taylor. Personally, I had it a draw.
The fight.
Harold Letterman gave the 12th round to Hopkins.
All to the winner by unanimous decision and still.
I thought Hopkins dug too much of a hole for himself in the first half of the fight.
Again, I think that I did enough to win the fight.
Hopkins was a 3-1 underdog, and he decided to move up from the 160-pound division to the 175-pound division and face Antonio Tarver. Tarver had dramatically unseated the long-reigning light heavyweight king Roy Jones Jr. and was now seen as the man at 175 pounds. Decades earlier, the middleweight king Sugar Ray Robinson attempted to win the 175-pound title. Despite winning every round of the fight, he fell apart in the 13th round due to heat exhaustion and lost the fight. Robinson was Hopkins' idol, and he was extremely motivated to win the 175-pound title.
And there's nothing else to prove other than what Ray Robinson couldn't achieve, and that's my motivation. Anything else won't motivate me, including money.
The former undisputed middleweight champion of the world, Bernard, the Executioner Hopkins.
I thought the fight was a complete schooling. We know Hopkins is an expert at fighting left-handed fighters, and he showed it in this fight.
Hand by Hopkins again. Another right hand by Hopkins. That one landed and bothered Tarver. And a third right hand lands for Hopkins.
there's a flurry.
And suddenly Bernard is taking over this round with a series of clean right hands.
Right here, you see them getting in a clinch, and you see once again Bernard with his head down, more effective and better coordinated inside.
Tarver was also schooled in the art of getting away with fouls.
To the hip on the opposite side where the referee can't see, and then a little uppercut. As I said, he knows all of the tricks of the game.
In the fifth round, Hopkins did his move we've seen many times before.
He was just fighting a one-dimensional fight, to just trying to land one good punch with a straight left.
His glove touched the canvas. No. It is a knockdown. Antonio Tarver was knocked down by Bernard Hopkins. He had to put a glove on the canvas to hold himself up. That's a huge moment for Hopkins.
Where he comes inside and creates a new angle for his right hand.
Like everything he's doing is so uncoordinated and weak tonight, and the energy level and the strength seems to be coming from Bernard. And as you see, Bernard fights with his head down, as I told you all the time.
At this point in his career, Hopkins started gaining a newfound respect from boxing fans because of his age and longevity. Notice the crowd chanting, "Be Hop," as he lines up another right hand.
Nope. He's just setting up his right hand over and over and over, occasionally a left hook.
That brief cheer was "Be Hop for Bernard Hopkins.
Hopkins pressed his advantage and took further control of his fight.
Punches together. See there? Perfect example.
Hopkins was just consistently able to land his right hand all night in the fight.
Big left hook by Hopkins. Tarver in trouble again as the round comes to a close.
Bernard shooting a straight right hand, taking advantage of the bad hand position of Tarver, which way he keeps his left hand too far to the side, and Bernard has found a little gap.
Hopkins was really starting to enjoy himself, and Tarver looked defeated.
Benji Esteves may have to stop the fight because of the swelling in Tarver's eyes.
I thought Hopkins probably could have forced a stoppage, but Tarver was a very tough guy who was never stopped in his entire career.
Now he switches southpaw. He's just toying with this.
Yeah, he's just having
a good time.
Humiliating him, really, what he's doing at this stage. Oh, well, I should have cleared what I was saying. The Tarver's going to be remembered by this so much.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
At the end, I thought Harold was generous in giving Tarver a round. I had a complete shutout to Hopkins.
And I just used Jersey Joe Walcott, the Mongoose, an Archie Moore type of style to keep spinning and rolling my shoulders without running and wasting energy. I was there to be able to counter, and that's what knocked him down, I think, the second or third round.
You know, he's a great champion, a legend. No one ever took anything away from Bernard Hopkins. He had his shining moment, and all praise to him, man. I mean, he deserves everything.
Hopkins' next fight was a 170-pound catch weight contest against Winky Wright. Winky had challenged Jermaine Taylor for the middleweight crown after Hopkins had moved up to 175. I thought Winky won that fight, but it was scored a draw.
The winner of this fight, not by box office appeal, but by actual athletic accomplishment, has a very good argument that they're the best fighter of this era in or around their weight neighborhood. That's right. You may have been living through the Winky Wright era this whole time and never have known it.
Let's do it.
Winky hadn't fought above 160 in his entire career.
Sustained attack coming in and get caught with a right hand.
He was a solid fighter with an excellent jab, and he used to dominate his fights.
Bad cut, but bad.
And that's what happens sometimes between a southpaw and a conventional fighter.
Well, the thing is, Bernard has a history of headbutts.
In the third round, there was a clash of heads, and Winky ended up with a cut.
Come right back, and that's when you saw the headbutt.
Hopkins, of course, would say, hey, all I did was turn my shoulder into him. He's the one who put his head on mine.
This was definitely one of the most boring fights of Hopkins' career. Both guys were crafty defensively, so not a lot of clean punches landed.
It's going to be hard to see them give him this round.
I agree.
In the end, I agreed with Harold, who scored the fight a draw, but Hopkins got the decision.
And we have celebrities at ringside tonight of all colors and stripes, beginning with Whitney Houston. Nearby, Catherine Zeta-Jones. Not too far away, Simon Cowell. Planet Hollywood Hotel is sponsoring the event. Sylvester Stallone is a primary owner of the hotel. His buddy Arnold Schwarzenegger, governor of California. The newly married Jay-Z. Not far away from him, Jim Belushi. And tennis superstar Pete Sampras. Michael J. Fox and a variety of others also in the crowd tonight.
Hopkins' fight against Joe Calzaghe was very interesting. Joe was a high-volume fighter who had a long career as champ at 168 pounds, but this was his biggest step.
Professional defeat. It's Bernard Hopkins.
Joe didn't show Hopkins the respect he deserved in round one and paid the price.
What you would do about Hopkins' supposedly demonstrated penchant.
Right goes Calzaghe down on a perfect right hand shot by Hopkins. And Joe Calzaghe's been down before, but never in a big fight.
No, Hopkins moved in like he was going to move into a clinch and shot a short, direct, point-to-point right hand.
I thought Hopkins set that right hand up beautifully with the jab, creating a perfect angle for the punch.
Great start for Hopkins in round one against Joe Calzaghe.
Here you see Bernard moving in as if he's going to go into a clinch and shoot a perfect pinpoint short right hand. Couldn't have been any better than that. And the fact that Calzaghe wasn't even expecting that, because from that shorter distance, it would have made it had much more effect than if it had been a long-range punch.
Notice the left hook counter from Hopkins here.
Calzaghe nears Hopkins. Bernard is reaching out and clutching him with the left arm.
Well, Mayweather had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, and I think so far it's Hopkins who's keeping Calzaghe from doing his thing.
Another counter left here lands as Joe is coming in. It's hard to see these punches landing in real time. Despite Hopkins is clearly landing the better punches in that round, the Herald scores it to Joe. I thought the story of this fight was that Joe was pressing forward and throwing more shots. But I thought he was missing a lot of shots.
Head down, puts the guard and getting hit, made opponents hurt the hands, but also he's landing very short, accurate punches.
Hopkins was slipping them by the smallest margins, and then he was landing sneaky right hands that were hard to see.
Body shots by Calzaghe. Hopkins drives him away with a counter right.
As he was catching Joe on the way in the counters.
Big right hand from Hopkins.
And Calzaghe looks bewildered at Hopkins' tactics.
Hopkins landed a big right there. Nice body shot there, too.
Here you see Bernard land a right hand, and as he usually does, he follows up, not with a left hook like he would, usually with physical tactics such as hitting it with his head or shoulders. But he's been successful with it in most of his career, and if he can get away with it, more power to him.
I've got Hopkins winning all 4 rounds so far, along with the knockout. Joe definitely throws more shots, and he throws a lot of flurries. It looks good and flashy, but how much is actually landing? I'm just showing you good work by Hopkins that might be overlooked because it's hard to see some of these shots in real time.
Bernard runs in with his head down every time.
Although they're caught, Calzaghe.
Good left-hand counter by Bernard there.
Easy by moving and boxing in and out a little bit. He can fight a much smarter fight.
Now Calzaghe starts to get the kind of spirited combat he wants.
Another knockdown.
I think it's also possible.
Like I said, Joe's aggression is eye-catching, but these kind of shots were landing by Hopkins, and I think it's probably one of those fights that's just hard to score.
Is to go hit it, as Calzaghe is doing.
That's what I was saying right there. Calzaghe almost was knocked down again.
Another example of a flashy Joe flurry here, but who landed the better punch in the exchange?
But they get points, and also leaving himself open for Bernard's punches. Bernard caught it with a short right hand right there.
I know Calzaghe
with his head down.
I know Calzaghe dominated that round, but that right hand almost put Calzaghe down.
Harold Letterman gave the round to Hopkins. So, that underlines your point, Max.
Hopkins had a knockdown, which gave him a 10-8 round, so you need to give Joe 7 rounds at least for him to win.
Hopkins lands his right.
I just couldn't do that.
To make himself difficult to hit. Sometimes Calzaghe wants to pull the trigger on a punch and just can't find Bernard. Calzaghe constantly trying to apply pressure, trying to speed the tempo in the fight, trying to make the 43-year-old man fight, and now showboating around the ring.
In the end, I had it 7-5 in rounds to Hopkins, and with the knockdown, that gave him a clear win for me.
That improvisational ability is what we're seeing here.
Hard right hand for Hopkins.
Here you see Joe landing a punch that he's been landing very effectively as the fight goes on. Straight right hand, a left hand.
The third is a judge from Illinois whose record is not all that intelligible to us. Don't know that much about it. As the seconds tick away. And they fight past the bell.
I know it might be a bit controversial, but I've shown you some nice shots from Hopkins throughout. I still think Joe was an exceptional fighter.
From Newbridge, Wales, still undefeated.
And I was just doing what Freddie Roach told me, just take him into deep water, pick him off when I want to, and let him run into the shots because he come straight forward. I mean, it's clear that the world know and the fans know, other than the Brits, know I won this fight. And I made it look slightly easy, but look at my face. I'm not bruised up. I don't have a bruise. I bust him up. I hit him with short right hands. And I control the pace like a true veteran. Tied him up when I want to. Walked him when I want to.
Touch gloves, bang at the bell. Let's do it up, baby.
Hopkins completely outclassed Ornelas next. He won every round of the fight, landing some nice single shots throughout.
All right, let's take a look at Hopkins. All right, Bernard Hopkins always been a guy that uses his head in the ring.
I thought he was very close to getting the stoppage at the end of the fight.
Be disciplined. Here it comes, the final bell. And they're on their feet at the Liacouras Center.
Wow. He came real close to stopping him.
But the bell saves Ornelas.
Okay, look. He goes right here, it's okay. Anything below that's low. Right here is okay. Anything below that's low. I want a good, clean fight. Obey my commands at all times. Above all, protect yourselves at all times. Let's go.
I thought that the rematch between Hopkins and Roy Jones was pretty sad. Roy had really declined. He was coming off a first-round knockout loss to Danny Green, a guy he would have played with in his prime.
He should be a little more defensive.
Bernard rushes in, Bull rushes in, now falls him right into the corner. Places 2 headshots, then goes back to that belt line.
Hopkins outclassed Roy in most of the fight.
Behind his jab, but that was a lead right hand that backed Roy Jones into a neutral corner.
Due to the bad blood between them, the fight was a foul-filled affair. In the 6th round, Hopkins went down after Jones hit him in the back of the head.
45 years old and still among the elites in the game. Now, he's not signing on to fight the best young guys of the light heavyweight division, as that was a hit to the back of the head.
Hopkins took 3 minutes to recover. and a point was taken off for the illegal punch. The punch didn't look that hard, but we have to remember that Hopkins was 45 years old at this time.
Bernard was holding on to his right hand. Let's get another look at it. That doesn't, it didn't look like Jones really loaded up on it.
When the fight resumed, Hopkins went right at Jones like an animal.
Back to action, and Bernard right to action. That spurs him on to make a fight of it. They're fighting right through the bell, right through the referee. They are going at it. Security into the ring. It just became a brawl instantly.
This is a bizarre round.
Two legends meeting up in a fight that folks were dismissing as lacking energy or drama and too late, and it turns into this halfway through.
It was sad to see Jones continue fighting at this point in his career when he was just a shell of himself.
Another overhand right.
In this sequence, Prime Roy would have thrown a lightning-quick counter hook at Hopkins, but at this advanced age, all he can do is cover up under attack. Hopkins was down for several minutes again in the 10th round after a low blow by Jones.
Yep, left hand straight below the belt. Seemed like it was on the guard, but we will take a look. But in that exchange, a left hand straight below the belt.
In the end, Hopkins got the clear victory, and I think the fans were just happy it was over. In the post-fight interview, Hopkins called out the heavyweight champion, David Haye.
But I want David Haye. I want to win a heavyweight champion of the world.
All right, Bernard. Good luck to you.
At 45 years old, Hopkins attempted to become the oldest fighter in history to win a world title as he took on the explosive punching champion, Jean Pascal. This took place in Pascal's hometown of Quebec in Canada.
The former undisputed middleweight champion of the world, introducing Bernard, the Executioner Hopkins.
Hopkins had a bad start to the fight.
Pascal never down.
Hopkins complains that it was a punch behind the head, but as far as I'm concerned, this is a legit knockdown.
As he was pulling out, great punch by Pascal.
A knockdown for Pascal in the final seconds of the opening round. Hopkins in disbelief.
The punch catches Hopkins on the side of the head. You have to call that a knockdown.
In round one, not what he's used to. And there's a right hand that cuffed him and knocked him down. Now, you can make the case, I guess it was behind the head, but that, as Antonio pointed out in one of our previous fights with Glenn Johnson and Alan Green, that's the only place he could throw that punch, Pascal.
And he landed, and the reason that it was so effective because Hopkins did not see that punch out.
Hopkins recovered well, and I thought he was doing well in the fight. But he got caught with a left hook again, and I thought this was another legit knockdown.
He's not hurt. 20 seconds to go in the round.
Canvas in this fight. A left hand and another hook, and it sends him down. Two left hooks there and did it.
No, it was a clear knockdown, and the reason why is because right here Hopkins relaxes, and Pascal was still in position to throw the left hook.
Hopkins was in a hole on the scorecards now, and he fought with a sense of urgency. But I think he was extremely lucky here not to get another knockdown scored against him.
Left hook, right hand over the top of the head, and it's being called a slip. It was to the back of the head.
I thought it was definitely an illegal punch to the back of the head, but it could have easily have been scored a knockdown.
The big difference, these punches much more powerful.
Even though he was giving up 18 years in age to Pascal, Hopkins was still the better technical fighter.
He did not have a big work rate. Oh, big right by Hopkins.
He was the one winning the rounds, but Pascal was always dangerous with counters.
Bernard Hopkins having his moments, though it was a much closer round, but there's the overhand right. But again, he was countered by the hook by Pascal. And, of course, that's vintage Bernard Hopkins, playing some games with the young man who he thinks now.
By now, Hopkins was used to taking his power, though, and he seemed to take the punches way better than he did earlier in the fight.
Bernard Hopkins.
He can't afford to take those shots from Hopkins.
Comes back with a left hook over the top.
The overhand right's becoming a huge weapon along with the hook by Hopkins.
Pascal was mostly getting caught with counters when he came forward, so his output dropped.
The straight right by Hopkins. In yet another angle, you can see that the jab is what set that up.
Notice the right-hand counter here by Hopkins. Getting hit like that is going to make you very reluctant to come forward.
Another right hand.
The jab was setting up some nice right hands. Notice that after 9 rounds, the press scorers have Hopkins winning the fight now. He has clawed the points back after those early knockdowns.
Hopkins up, and so is Bernard Fernandez from the Philadelphia newspaper.
In the end, I had Hopkins winning the fight.
A draw. The decision is a majority draw.
I thought a draw was a bit unfair to Hopkins. I think everyone realized he was the better fighter, but he did get dropped twice early in the fight.
But the fight was very, very close. I mean, I know Hopkins going to have beef with this decision, but what can you say?
Come on, man. I had the guy beat up. He was holding. I'm the older guy. Come on, man. That's not right, man. I won every round. They got me winning damn near every round. I put a hell of a performance for the 45-year-old man. And look, it's going to be controversy and talks about this, but this was a sure enough robbery, and this is what hurts the sport.
And you was ready to quit, and you was blowing and puffing, and went to your corner like a rag doll, done, defeated, and knew that you lost that fight.
Boxers, I'm the referee. I spoke to you both in the dressing room. I obey my command at all times. You both know the rules. Watch the heads, keep the punches up. When I shout break, you break clean. And remember, defend yourself at all times. Shake hands. Hey, let's go.
The first big moment of the fight happened in the 3rd round.
That he was awed by Hopkins' reputation in the first fight, and that's why he wasn't more aggressive.
These are some real hard shots Hopkins is landing here.
I thought Pascal was really shaken up by the shot.
Punch of the fight, and to me, I think may have changed the course of the fight, because from that point on...
Pascal's explosive punches were always dangerous, though. Hopkins was extremely hurt there, and I think it's pretty crazy how he was able to take these kind of shots at the age of 46.
Pretty quickly from the top, but that brought the crowd out of their seats.
Tremendous punch. I mean, he was seriously hurt. I think that's the first time in his career that I saw Bernard hurt.
Agreed. Like that, yes.
The replay will show us that this punch literally shook Hopkins down to his boots.
Bernard got hit with it. Normally, he would not have gotten hit with it early in the fight because he plays it safe. But this time he's exchanging, as you said, Jim, he's making it much more exciting, but also much more easier to get hit and hurt than he does in his previous fights.
Hopkins got back on track and started using veteran tactics. Notice these illegal kidney punches on the blind side of the referee. Notice Hopkins also thumbing Pascal in the eye with his jab.
Hopkins went right into the eye of Pascal.
Okay, so we...
I think Hopkins was getting in Pascal's head with some roughhouse tactics, and Pascal was falling for it.
To each other. And Pascal is losing his composure. And you cannot allow Bernard Hopkins to gull you into that.
I thought Pascal did better in this fight than he did in their first fight. But he was very lucky that he didn't get a knockdown scored against him here after his glove touched the canvas after being hit. In the next round, Hopkins shows an amazing piece of skill.
Here you see Hopkins land a right hand that hit on the side of the head of Pascal. Pascal went down as a result of that, though, even though it was not a power punch. The referee didn't call it a knockdown. Officially, it really is. If you touch the gloves, your gloves...
You're both instrumental in helping to create the draw. Pascal lands a right hand.
That's another knockdown.
And again, his glove touches the canvas. And again, it's going to be ruled not a knockdown.
Again, I thought that this was a very clear knockdown that should have been scored to Hopkins.
Got out of the way, and as a result of landing the punch, Pascal went down again. He touched the gloves touched the floor. Should have been another knockdown. He would not have went down and touched the floor if he hadn't been
Despite
hit.
being hurt again in the 12th round, Hopkins used all of his experience to survive and won a clear, unanimous decision, becoming the oldest man to ever win a world title. What an amazing accomplishment for a truly great fighter.
12 rounds, the light heavyweight championship of the world.
Good luck to both fighters. Touch them up, come out at the bell.
The thought with Hopkins is he's always fighting father time. He's 46 years old.
I've seen a lot of controversies in boxing, but Hopkins' fight with Dawson was a new one.
Entire round.
Well, I think it's one of the big advantages for great defenders like Hopkins and Mayweather. The fight doesn't have to be great, and that's a tackle by Tad Dawson. He picked Hopkins up and threw him down.
Time!
After a tentative first round, Dawson seemed to throw Hopkins off him, and Hopkins landed awkwardly on his left shoulder.
Glove against the canvas.
You can't continue.
The fight would be stopped and be called a no contest. There was a question mark over the legitimacy of the injury, but Hopkins was assessed by a doctor, and after some scans were taken, it was shown that he did suffer a pretty nasty injury.
That was a blatant foul. He picked me up, Max. When you pick somebody up, this ain't the UFC, this ain't the MMA. He picked me up and threw me down.
I expect you to obey my commands, and I want a good, clean fight. And protect yourself at all times, all right? Let's touch gloves. Let's touch them up. Touch them. Let's go.
I found this tough to score. Dawson definitely threw more punches, but a lot of the time, Hopkins defended brilliantly like he did here.
Moving away from the punches. And Dawson, at that time, is burning up a lot of energy and not landing anything.
In the fourth round, there was a similar butt to the one we saw in the Winky fight earlier, and Dawson was cut.
Really should get off a lot more. He let Hopkins steal that third round. 2 rounds to 1, Chad Dawson.
Time. Go to corner.
There's blood outside the left eye.
I've watched every available Hopkins fight, and he's never come out on the wrong side of a headbutt. Hopkins was as crafty as ever, as he had good success in the fight.
Chin for Hopkins. Chad Dawson continues to fight Bernard Hopkins' fight.
The fight wasn't the most entertaining to watch.
Well, somewhere there are some great light heavyweights rolling over in their graves at the dreadful action that has taken place here so far, but at the end of the day, it's either a W or an L on the record.
Dawson was an excellent fighter at range, and I just thought it was always going to be risky coming inside like this with Hopkins moving his head all the time.
Got to carry it on Chad Dawson's left eye.
The styles of the fighters didn't really gel, and I just found it a very difficult fight to score. In the end, one judge had it a draw, which I'd probably agree with, but the 2 other judges had it for Dawson, and Dawson was the new 175-pound king.
New Ring Magazine WBC Light Heavyweight Champion of the World, BAM! Chad Dawson!
Hopkins made history in his next fight when he became world champion again at the age of 48. Tavoris Cloud was completely outclassed and dominated for most of the fight. What an amazing accomplishment to be a world champion at the age of 48. It's completely insane.
I got a history of destroying young champions, and you never see him again.
Karo Murat was 5 years of age when Hopkins turned professional. The 48-year-old put on another clinic in his title defense. He hurt Murat in the 7th. His reflexes and speed looked really good for a 48-year-old man. Hopkins continued to make history in every fight. Hopkins retained his title and, at 49 years old, became the oldest world champion in boxing history. Just 2 months shy of his 50th birthday, Hopkins took on the dangerous, undefeated challenger, Sergey Kovalev. Kovalev had been rampaging through the division and had never been past 8 rounds in a fight. Kovalev was a lot better than Hopkins' last few opponents. I thought Hopkins' age showed in this fight, and Kovalev was a very well-schooled, high-volume fighter with mega power.
First solid right hand that Kovalev threw. He has extraordinary power.
And as Hopkins tried to come out, Kovalev was ready and countered that jab with a straight right over the top.
Prime Kovalev was just a bad matchup for Hopkins at almost 50 years of age. Kovalev also just looked huge against Hopkins.
Doesn't have the same mustard on his shots, but he seems less wary of Kovalev's punches.
Well, they caught a right hand there, and he's clowning to try to tell Kovalev he wasn't hurt, but he's getting hammered with hard shots. Kovalev still trying to score a knockout.
If Hopkins has anything left, he better put it behind one right hand right now.
I thought that it was sad to see Hopkins getting beaten up in the last round. Hopkins lost every round of the fight, but I gave him even more respect than I already had for him for showing the guile and toughness to go the distance.
Hammering Bernard Hopkins from pillar to post as we get to the final bell.
And guys, there were many who thought if it got rough for Hopkins, he would look for a way out.
He didn't.
But there he was in the 12th round, standing toe-to-toe with the most dangerous, biggest puncher in the light heavyweight division, taking shots clean off his head, staggering back into the...
Hopkins would retire after this fight. However, 2 years later, at almost 52 years of age, Hopkins would come back for his last ever fight. Hopkins was knocked out of the ring by legitimate punches, and it was just sad to see a legend of the sport go out like that. I think Hopkins was hurt and the fight was rightfully stopped. Hopkins would retire for good after this fight. His legacy will be that of a true warrior. He turned his life around after going to prison as a young man. He lost his first fight and turned his career around by working hard and staying disciplined. He was a tremendous fighter in the first part of his career as he viciously knocked out many good fighters. His clean style and discipline led to his insane longevity in the sport, and I don't think we will ever see another fighter have the same kind of longevity. Hopkins didn't duck opponents. He stepped into the ring with guys who could have seriously hurt him, and at 49 and 51 years of age, no less. I think he deserves the ultimate respect from all boxing fans and all human beings in general.